Hey everyone, my name is Jack. Welcome back to the channel. I cover a variety of topics as they relate to personal finance, real estate, investing, and all that sort of stuff. So if you like that sort of content, definitely have a look around the channel. And if you like what you see, be sure to subscribe. But for those of you who've been following along, I recently closed on my first ever rental property, which was an out-of-state deal in Indianapolis, Indiana. Definitely check out some of my recent videos if you're at all interested in real estate investing and you want to see a full breakdown of this deal. But today I want to talk about how I actually own this deal, or more accurately, how my LLC actually owns this deal and how I went about setting up my entity structure and how you can potentially set up your entity structure when it comes to real estate investing. Before I go any further, I have to recommend that you go see an attorney if you're looking to set up an entity and you need legal advice. This video is not legal advice, and you should get your own attorney if you're trying to do something like this. I'm just using this video as a chance to show you what I do. It's definitely not legal advice. Now, when you buy a property, you have two options. One is to buy it in your own name directly. This is how most homeowners do it. I own my condo in my own name using an owner-occupied loan. This is a very common process and a very common method when it comes to buying real estate. The loan will be in your name, the property will be in your name, everything about it will be in your name. Now, the advantage of buying in your own name is that it's very simple, it's straightforward, you don't have to set anything up, it's just you. You show up and you buy the property and you apply for a loan in your name. It's very simple, straightforward. Your other option is to set up a corporation of some sort, an entity as we call it, and that is where you actually set up a sort of separate business from yourself, and then that business is encased in this legal fiction that we call an entity. Most often in real estate, the entity that's used is a limited liability company, which is an LLC for short. Now, I actually have a full video going over LLCs and how they work, and I'll go ahead and link that above. It was one of my first videos a while back before I set up my nice microphone and everything like that, so pardon me there. But the content still is very relevant for this video. But in general, an LLC, it's in the name. It limits your liability since a person who sues your business isn't going to be able to take you for personal liability, which would open you up to all sorts of different risk. It helps to limit risk, and it's used as an incentive. The whole reason that LLCs exist is to incentivize people to take risks and to start businesses, because your personal assets shouldn't be on the hook if you do things properly. You can actually sell shares of your entity depending on securities rules in your state, and also nationwide. You have to be careful with those, but you can't really do that if it's just in your name. You're going to actually have to find some sort of way to form a partnership or some other entity and then transfer it into that entity if you're really going to try and scale something. Now, not everyone wants to do that, so LLCs definitely aren't for everyone, but they're definitely something that you should keep in mind when you're looking to invest in real estate, especially if you're not going to live in the property. But anyways, this is actually how I set up my entities when I actually went to make the purchase on the single family home in Indianapolis. Now, we actually used multiple LLCs to make this purchase, and I'll explain why in just a second. But basically, the first LLC in this chain is our holding company. My wife and I each own 50% of this LLC, so any revenue that comes into this LLC, or I should say any profits that go out of it, should be split 50-50 between us. Now, if we wanted to bring on other partners, we could do that. We could sell a portion of this business and then bring on someone else if we really wanted to do that. There's some limitations in our LLC agreement as to when and how we can sell things, since we require the other person's approval, since, we're husband and wife, and we wouldn't want the other getting swindled into something or somehow backstabbing the other with all of our real estate holdings. But anyways, you can probably do something like that with your LLC, where you set up a way that you can actually sell an interest in that LLC to a partner if you want to actually do a joint venture with someone, but don't want to do it in your own name. That's definitely an option for most LLC setups. So anyways, we each own half of this LLC. This LLC doesn't own any real estate directly. Instead, what we did when we actually bought this property is we set up another LLC. This one is owned by the first LLC. So we have an entity within an entity, and that's definitely something you can do, since the top level entity is technically treated like a person under the eyes of the law, as long as you treat it like a separate business. So my wife and I are two people within a business, and then that business owns another business, this second LLC. So in a freaky sort of way, the second business doesn't really have any people in it. I'm technically the manager of that second business, but really the only owner is our first business, of which I'm the manager of. That's why I'm de facto the manager of the second one. Now, that second LLC owns the property, and that's all it owns. That is called a shell entity, and this is what real estate investors on a large scale do a lot. And I'm talking about from your very large investors that own buildings like the Sears, aka Willis Tower in Chicago, all the way down to little guys like me who may own 1 or 2 or 3 properties. So what I'm really doing on paper and in practice is I'm treating this building, this single-family home, as its own business, and it's surrounded by this entity structure that is the second LLC. Now, any revenues and expenses stay within this second LLC, and then if it makes any profits, then it's distributed to its one shareholder, which is the first entity, the first LLC. So then that profit is driven upstream into the first LLC, which is where my wife and I are the 50-50 owners of that LLC, and then we get to split those profits after that. Now, if we were just going to own one property, using 2 LLCs probably doesn't make any sense. You just have more legal expenses and more complication for no real extra benefit. The benefit here is actually when it comes to scale. If we didn't want to scale, then we could have just left it at one LLC that bought the property directly and then we call it a day. But because we want to scale, what we're actually going to be able to do is every new property we buy will set up another LLC that is owned by the first LLC. So the first LLC should eventually become a shareholder, basically, in a bunch of different small holding companies, or maybe large holding companies, who knows, that actually contain each of the properties. And this goes well beyond just real estate, this entity structure strategy. If you look at something like Alphabet, which is a corporation, it owns entities within it, like Google LLC. Google is technically its own company that is owned by a larger holding company. This creates 2 sort of layers of legal protection and allow one business to be protected, or insulated is the best word to use, against the rest of the company. And the reason this is advantageous is because if a problem occurs on one property within one of these LLCs, then it's contained to that LLC as long as we follow all the rules properly and make sure that we're treating it like its own business, which we fully intend to do. If one of the LLCs fails, then it doesn't necessarily affect all of the other ones. All of the other ones are their own businesses. So the problems of one business should not suddenly become the problems of another. Now, it will be from a management perspective, since we're going to be managing all of these businesses, but when it comes to a legal liability perspective, it shouldn't leak into all of the other properties and all of the other LLCs that we'll have set up. So for example, if within the next couple of years we got 5 LLCs that each own their own property, all underneath one umbrella LLC, then if one of those properties has a problem and goes bankrupt for some reason, it's contained to that one LLC. It won't affect all of the others, and we'll just basically get rid of that one and keep moving forward. And that's the whole advantage, is that risk is contained to a particular property, which prevents it from leaking into the rest of your business or into your personal assets. Now again, I want to clarify, this is why we're doing the structure, but it's not as though it's bulletproof or that there's no disadvantages to it. For example, mortgages in an LLC name typically are more expensive or maybe less flexible than something in my own name where I'm owner-occupying a property. That's certainly a problem we're going to have to face. On the flip side, there's no limit to the amount of LLC loans that you can get, whereas there is a direct limit on the amount of government-subsidized owner-occupied loans you can get. At the same time, a court could always say that these LLCs are a sham, and we're not going to honor them in this proceeding, and we're going to pretend like none of them exist, and we're going to come after you personally anyways. That could always happen. If we do things right, it shouldn't, but you never know. A court always has that power if it has a bad day or if I do something wrong. That's where something like umbrella insurance can really come in handy, where you have just some extra insurance to protect yourself in the event that your LLCs don't work for some reason. You'll at least have some extra insurance to cover you against the personal liability that you might face if you do something wrong in your business. And none of this even mentions the expense associated with setting up and maintaining these LLCs. It takes a lot of time too, since you have to write meeting minutes and that sort of thing. But definitely check your state's requirements for setting up an LLC. Some states are much more expensive than others, and they're all different. And if you hire an attorney to do a very custom LLC agreement or something like that, then that can get really expensive as well. But that should be more of an upfront cost, and then you'll have your annual renewal fees and that sort of stuff as well to take care of. So once you get a ton of these things, if you're trying to build a massive empire, your legal costs are going to get pretty high. But again, it allows you to scale while limiting your risk, or at least it should. So it's not as though it's without benefit. But anyways, I hope this video was helpful for not only understanding how my entities are set up, but also why, and also how you could potentially set up LLCs for your own benefit. Again, speak with an attorney first to see if setting up something like this makes sense for your business. But that's all I've got for today. If you like this video, please like it since it helps the channel out a lot. If you like this sort of content about real estate investing, the markets, personal finance, and that sort of stuff, definitely subscribe so you don't miss any new updates since I post new videos every single week. And have a look down in the description for links to get free stocks with Webull and Robinhood. Also check out M1 Finance while you're at it. My affiliate links are down there, and I would very much appreciate it if you at least gave them a look. But until next time, take care.